You good? Okay. Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the Altamont Zoning Board of Appeals of April 23rd, 2024. The time now is 7 p.m. I do want to bring your attention at the exits in case there should be an emergency. To your right, to your left, and my left over here, not into the firehouse, okay? Having said that, would you be joining me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our topic of discussion is a continuation of the public hearing for CMM Fox Living Solutions, LLC, aka Troy Miller, for the major subdivision property at SBL 37.14-3-6.1. This time I want to introduce you to Mr. Grant, village engineer who's going to be talking some points on the project.
Yes. Thank you, Danny. Excuse my informal attire. I had hip surgery about a week and a half ago, and tight pants and belts just aren't going to mix with an 8-inch incision. So I'm not going to go into great depth because I need to get out of here and get a pain med pretty soon. But there's basically two areas of discussion I'd like to cover tonight. And the first is some of the drainage concerns. And there's legitimate drainage concerns for properties that are near this proposed project, particularly on Schoharie Plank, or as we call it, West Schoharie Plank Road. It is influenced, drainage down there is influenced by the creek nearby. There's an existing condition that is the village's responsibility that they are pursuing. That creek is overdue for dredging. It was probably dredged 20 years ago. The village, along with some outside help, excavated feet of rock and sediments out of the creek, and to the point where culverts that come from West Schoharie Plank Road, there's like a 15-inch reinforced concrete pipe that comes from this area of the driveway, existing catch basins, and also from Euclid. You can't even see those anymore. They're buried. So obviously they don't drain freely as they do when the creek is properly dredged. It will always need dredging at some interval in time, likely every 8 to 10 years perhaps. A lot of that depends on what Mother Nature does, and it's essentially the large storms that bring a large sediment load, rocks, smaller debris, and you can tell. I live on Sand Street. Since 1988, grew up on the hill, very familiar with the village, and I walk this area myself. When the bridge was put in over the creek onto Schoharie Plank Road, it made it nice. It didn't have to forge down into the creek, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the water level, even at a modest flow, is not far from the underside of that bridge. About 2 foot of material, at least, needs to be excavated out of there. Probably from Lincoln all the way down past where the old bridge, Schoharie Plank Road Bridge is, but probably where the creek bends, probably another 200-300 feet anyway. That would give it a free discharge and a better drainage situation here. Before we bought our house in '88, we looked at Owen Murray's old house on Euclid Avenue. And the first thing that struck me was these sump pumps are going off constantly. Across the street, every time I walk down there, if I linger for a few minutes, it's coming on. It's a high groundwater area. And that concerned me. It was a nice house. I liked the Murray's house, but decided to go elsewhere. So I went on the other side of the village, next to this stream over here. There is some subtle differences. This has a larger drainage area, but we don't get the kind of sediment buildup that this creek does. A lot of that has to do with the slope. Ours is more steeply pitched. Velocity keeps these sediments and rocks and everything going. Not that there's no issues in my creek, but it's flatter over here. Things tend to settle out. Buttermilk Falls, and this drainage area goes well up into the old Peter Young Center and a lot of the Brighton Back property, and not a lot of development up there. It's mostly woods, but it's steep, runs off quickly. There's clay up there, so there's a high runoff coefficient here. The drainage philosophy that I've talked with Roe and Steve Walrath and Bill Smart on this project was to minimize the impacts of the drainage necessary for their lots, to minimize impacts on Marion Court, particularly West Schoharie Plank and up near Western Avenue. Because of the, won't call it a conservation subdivision, but there's a limited amount of disturbance, soil disturbance on this project, and it is well below 5 acres. That is the threshold. If it was over 5 acres, this would have to have the full SWIP, where you would have treatment and quantity type of practices. But they aren't required because this is exempt because of the amount of disturbance, right around 2.5 acres or so. However, I still ask for rain gardens as a means of collecting roof runoff, having a means to put it in a linear type of small basin, if you will, planted with vegetation that will allow some of the water to infiltrate into the soils. The soils, they did quite a bit of soil exploration over there. This isn't pine bush sand by any means, nor is it Leesom Lane clay that I grew up around. So it's somewhere in between. It does have some permeability, and we seek to take advantage of that by directing the roof drainage via downspouts directly to rain gardens on each of the lots. The concept of this, I've done a lot of hydrology over the years, and this is what we call beat the peak. That's lingo for the real peak, the highest rate of flow in the stream isn't when this drainage from this site reaches a creek. It's when upland areas, essentially west of Maple Avenue, going up to Buttermilk Falls and up on a hill, when that mass of runoff gets down here. So we want to get this drainage more or less out of here and have means of distributing and infiltrating the water from this project site without running it off onto neighboring properties. As is the rest of Altamont, you can really say this about the whole town. It drains from west to east, from UA to LA, upper Altamont to lower Altamont. There's really there are some formal drainage systems on some of the side street. My side street has none, virtually none. They finally put a catch basin out at the end to get to the creek, but the Schoharie Plank Road does have some drainage down there that we want to take advantage of and get it to the creek. The project drainage, want to see that diverted so it doesn't just run into the back of these lots on West Schoharie Plank. I would like them handled such that they come down to the driveway and either get into a ditch that connects into pipes, that connects into existing infrastructure that goes to the creek. None of that's helps the fact that the dredging needs to be done as soon as possible. That's going to take some time and permitting with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. As such, the SWIP for this project essentially is to divert to rain gardens and essentially an infiltration trench that is shown on sheet C-130. No, C. Which is it? Grading and drainage plan. So as it is now, some of the runoff does get towards those lots on West Schoharie Plank Road. Most of it, of the existing land, goes towards Marion Court. There's a hedgerow and a tree area there that basically it sheet drains across the land, which has historically been hayed. It's a meadow type of vegetation, but there's nothing to block it from going towards Marion Court. So we put some interceptor swales that will direct the water so it doesn't go to Marion Court and comes out to kind of the southeastern end of Lot 8. There's an existing drainage course that gets right out to the creek. So the rain gardens will do a couple of things. One, they'll have some storage and water quality treatment from the homes, their roofs, and somewhat their driveways. So other than lots 10 and 11, each lot does have its own rain garden. One of the comments that I had is they were shown very close to the buildings, like 5 to 10 feet away. That would flood the basements. They're too close. Wanted to get them away from the house far enough that it doesn't influence the basement and has an ability to, when they do fill, and yes, they will fill at some point, they'll go off towards our interceptor swales and be dealt with properly. I've asked for some swales to be added such that they get to these interceptor, I'll call them infiltration trenches on the Marion Court side. But there's also a need for drainage swales on Lot 5 such that the existing properties on West Schoharie Plank Road don't get runoff from this, that they are now. They are getting some runoff there, not a lot. Runoff goes perpendicular to the contours, which is basically headed straight for Marion Court. On the fringes, yes, a little bit does come over here. And I did, during our walkthrough, noted some of the existing conditions on these lots on West Schoharie Plank Road, and the one next to the driveway, there's a hole in the back. I was like, why would somebody leave a hole? And then as I thought about it more and more, and when I saw the 100-year floodplain, which is encompassing virtually all of these lots on West Schoharie Plank Road. I think it's more of what we call a boil, where the high volume runoff from some ridiculous sized storm, probably Hurricane Floyd, if I remember correctly, in 1992, basically gouged and eroded a hole in the backyard and never got filled in. So when somebody says they see 5 feet of water, in that area probably was. What the floodplain map shows is that quite an area along West Schoharie Plank Road and even going up along Western Avenue can have as floodwaters overflow out of the creek up to a foot deep. That is variable and definitely depends on the condition of the creek. The creek needs dredging. But what we want to do is get the runoff of this project in and out of here before the real peak from going up along Township Road, Buttermilk Falls, and towards the La Salette. I call it La Salette because I go back that far, but the old Peter Young Center. So beat the peak. That's what that is about. The second part of what I'd like to talk about is the recent submission and some of my comments. This submission addressed many of the comments I've had in the last 3 submissions, and really became evident that a walkthrough with Rowe and Bill Smart, who's the engineer of record on these plans, to show them what I was talking about. And ultimately, what that culminated is some of the improvements that are here. So I'm just going to launch into some comments on the plans. Lot 1, at one time, early on in this project, in one of the meeting minutes, I remember that the Lot 1, which is on the Western Avenue side, the north side, there was discussion of not having a basement. The applicant would like to have a basement for that house, but I know what it's like to pump groundwater, because I do it myself. And not only is it a pain in the tush when the power goes out, if you don't have backup power, your basement floods. It's also some pretty high energy costs to pump continuously. So what I suggested, and Steve's team seemed to like the idea, is raise the house up 1.5 feet, maybe even 2 feet. With that comes the basement floor. So, and they did that. So that's something for the board to decide whether that is amenable to them. I understand wanting to have a basement, even though we have flooded in my house. It takes up a lot of storage. And when you have kids and holiday decorations, there's no shortage of stuff you got to put in there. Yes, my basement is full, and so is my attic. So that's something the board can discuss after I leave. What I want to see on next comment is the Schoharie Plank Road is not in good shape. After this project, the village has recognized that they got to wait till the project is done. But this road needs to be, I'm not even sure it can be resurfaced or should be reconstructed, but it is a narrow road. It is a wacky right-of-way here. This thing goes back to the early mid-1800s and was a military road to get out to Schoharie, the Schoharie Plank Road. the plank comes from. Yes, it was so wet down there, they did have timbers there to allow carriages and horses to actually get through the mud. So it is a wet area. I recognize that when we looked at Euclid. We're trying to do our best to actually improve the condition down there. Is it going to change the 100-year floodplain? No. 100-year floodplain is shown on the plans now, and it is where it is. That has much to do with the upland drainage as it does with a hayfield converted to large lot subdivisions. So there has been discussion, and it needs to happen, is you cannot bring construction equipment and the whole construction process, you know, the truss deliveries, the concrete trucks, the gravel trucks. They come down Schoharie Plank, and it's going to destroy it more than it is now. It's passable now. It serves its purpose, but what needs to happen is in between lots 1 and 3, there is a shared access in off Western Avenue. Before those lots are constructed, that is the construction entrance. All the construction deliveries, all the tradesmen trucks, all the gravel trucks need to come in there and exit that way. Ultimately, as these houses get built, you work your way out of here. So, you know, maybe lot 8 is the first house built, or lot 5 or 7 or 6. Doesn't really matter to me, but you know, there's a break in the hedgerow, and you can get out to Western Avenue without exacerbating the condition of Schoharie Plank Road. I want to see those notes on the plan. We've discussed them, but they really aren't here to speak of. So when the contractor gets there, these plans tell the story, what needs to be done and the process in which it needs to be done. It isn't, you know, up to him on important things like this. Build your way out of this from east to west, and that'll take care of that. One of the things that I had him add was a drainage swale along lot 5 that comes down to the driveway, a swale along the driveway and entering a flared end section or a pipe that connects into 2 new catch basins that connect into the existing catch basin. Now, there's not a lot of room here, you know, even with a 16-foot road. There's 2 other things of importance there. One is that ditch, or means of runoff conveyance, and 2 is some screening plantings. It's fairly well wooded along the back of the lots and along the sides. It needs to take a minimalist approach to removing trees in this 64-foot swath that's going to comprise the driveway. In addition to maintaining existing vegetations, at a minimum, I would like to see some shrubs planted basically next to the houses. So if you're looking out your side window, you're looking at a privacy hedge. There's been, I saw in some letters, you know, a continuous type of hedge. That's up to the board, but the backyards here, there's not a lot to screen there. I would like to see screening for the houses themselves on both sides. 3 bayberry bushes were proposed for the screening on each side for a total of 6. I don't think that's enough. I'm proposing 5 on each side for a total of 10. The species selection is actually a good one. Bayberries, even northern bayberries in particular, are hardy to zone 3 or zone 4 here. And the lower the number, essentially the farther north the zone is. So those would help screen, they would fill out. They're good for birds and wildlife. They have the white berries. You've probably seen them in some flower bouquets. They're often one of those, not the flowers themselves, but the complementary things. They smell great too. And so they have some positive attributes there. So the grading of the road for the first 150 feet is fairly flat. It's like 0.4%, which is lower than I would normally do for paved roads. In my first comments, I said 0.8%. There's two things going on here. The steeper you go up, the more that serves as somewhat of a dam for when the 100-year flood does come. So by keeping it lower and flatter, we'll be able to overflow and get out to Scary Plank Road and back to the creek. Again, this is in a 100-year floodplain. We're trying to minimize the impacts of this project to the existing properties. We are not going to change the 100-year floodplain. But there are proposed drainage provisions, both in swales, rain gardens, infiltration trenches, and piping and catch basins that divert the water away from getting into the back of lots, and proper grading. One thing to think about, and I saw it in one of the letters, the swale will be able to handle essentially your routine drainage, probably up to the 10-year storm. If somebody wanted to go beyond that, really don't want to see the hedgerow impacted. That should stay. But in digging, which essentially is a ditch, a swale, the excess material can go up along the back towards that hedgerow, essentially be a berm. It could be planted with grass, but it's a further deterrent from runoff from getting into the back of these lots. So I think that could be improved somewhat by doing those diversions. There are some technical comments I'm not going to get into, but labeling is, I think, a blown-up plan, and grading in this area would be important. It could be hard piped instead of that swale alongside the driveway. Could be hard piped up to where those driveway clusters could be. The swale is another means of getting it there. But so there's some competition for space there. In this section, it's 16 foot wide and crowned. On the upstream or the west side, that crown would go into a ditch and would come right out to the drainage system. On the east side, there is not a ditch, but there could be a curb, not a concrete curb, but an asphalt tip-up. There's an example one right outside this door, where essentially the asphalt is bermed up a little bit. It has a couple inches of above the gutter line, so that runoff doesn't go into the adjacent lot to the east. Directs it down to the catch basins that are proposed and gets out to the creek. Next comment, lots 10 and 11, we're back up here on Western Avenue. These are smaller lots, 20,000 square foot lots. There's one rain garden with downspouts coming from both houses to a rain garden shared on the property line. I don't recommend that. Each lot should have its own rain garden, because I can see the argument now. If you're sharing a rain garden on a property line, who's maintaining it? Who's doing this? Whose is it? It's going to be a problem. So each should have their own rain garden. I asked them to move for Lot 5. They had one shown close to the hedgerow and closer to West Gahary Plank Road. Take that off to the other side. Keep it as far away from Euclid Avenue as possible. There have been the rain gardens, so I do want 2 for lots, 1 each for lots 10 and 11. Only 1 is shown now. Not a big deal to put another one in. Per minutes and other meetings, we want all the roof drainage to go to it. Now, generically, what's shown here for these home footprints, I think is generic. I don't know if this is going to be builders on spec, or is this what is proposed? Generic. So, typically you would have a downspout, maybe 2 in the front and 2 in the back on your normal sized and oriented house. That doesn't mean they can't be piped together and sent to the rain garden. The rain garden will have some storage for that runoff and some treatment. Not that roof drain runoff has a lot of pollutants in it, but it has modest amounts. So showing the gutters front and back tied into the additional piping, generically that can be done under this phase of site planning, but ultimately, these lots are going to have to come in, ask for building permits. Okay, what's your floor plans look like? How many square foot do you have? What's the elevations look like? And oh yes, by the way, where's your rain gutters? To me, that's not an option. Some builders don't like to put them on, and there's splatter all along the siding. It influences drainage. It goes right down into the basement. You want to get that away. That's what gutters are for. They're not that expensive, and they're worth it. Once you have mold in your basement, you got problems. So I think generically we're going to have some plans, notes on the plans that say all of the rain gutters, all the roof areas will be guttered to the rain gardens, details to come through the building permit process. The building inspectors say, where's the rain gutters? Show me those pipes that get it to it. And that's what needs to be done. That's at not so much the ZBA phase, but in the building permit phase. The village code enforcement officer needs to look for that and go from there. There was also asked about fire truck turnaround areas. There's been something shown on the plans where down in this area, the West Gahary Plank Road, it increases from 16-foot wide to 20-foot wide at the nucleus of the 4 driveways that branch off. Same deal up here with those 3 lots. I wouldn't call those a turnaround. Not unless the intent is to pull into one of the driveways, back into another. Keep in mind, these trucks are long, and they're a turnout. In other words, you can get the fire truck off to the side, get your hoses, fight your fires, and still have people pass by, provided their house isn't on fire. That's a turnout, not a turnaround. So unless, I don't see how a truck is gonna turn around without going up into the driveways. Because of the weight of the trucks, 50,000 pounds, you need a greater gravel base than a driveway. There are a couple details on the plans for the driveways, and they kind of talk about the common area. They're the exact same. They're the exact same 8-inch subbase, the exact same 4.5 inches of pavement, which is more than enough for a driveway. Something fell through the cracks there. So what I really want to know, and I don't know, is the fire chief here? Okay. What was your impression of the turnarounds? What are you really looking for? To use the driveways to turn around, or are you backing out of there?
Hopefully have some sort of area to be able to turn around in, whether we use the driveways or not.
Okay. Something 20,
Driveways would have to be wide enough, our trucks are about 30 feet long.
okay. So 20 foot wide isn't gonna cut it.
Well, no, not at the end, there's enough to park and like say, fight the fire, but
Yeah,
as long as we can back into a driveway.
okay. And that's, can be fine. There's opposing driveways, it can be done. That same gravel subbase that will support the truck of that weight needs to be carried. It needs to be a plan where this is how I'm gonna back into lot 6 driveway. I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna pull forward into lot 6, I'm gonna back out into driveway for lot 8, and then I can turn around and go back to the firehouse. Same deal up there. So what I need is a real good subbase. The 4.5 inches of pavement is fine. 8 inches of gravel is okay for a driveway. It isn't for a fire truck. I want that 12 inches. You don't want to get the calls, you just turned around in my driveway and you ruined my driveway. There needs to be a designated area. It's 12 inches of subbase up to this point. Here's the plan for backing this out. Then you don't get that call. You know, keep in mind, this isn't just rolling over. You got dynamic turning movements there, so it needs to be a road-like construction. It doesn't have to carry up to the garage doors, because you just need to pull your nose in, and so it needs to be a planned event, and it needs to have the road cross-section to do it. The two details, like I said, they both show 8 inches. I think it could be 6 inches for the driveway, and probably 3.5 inches, not 4.5 inches of pavement for the driveways. But in these turnaround areas, in these common, 4.5 inches and 12. I'm gonna memorialize this in a letter, but wanted to go through my comments, get some reaction from the board, and if there's anything else I need to weave into my comments and letter, we'll go from that. But, you know, we want to protect Scary Plank Road from the construction activity, not just from weight and turning movements and all that, but just the disturbance. And, you know, the ordinance, I believe, in the village is construction can start at 7. Okay. I saw some letters where construction started at 6 a.m. here. That's not a way to, you know, make friends and be neighborly. So they're gonna have to comply with that. But coming up and down Scary Plank Road with construction activity, I don't think needs to be notated and not allowed. Now, ultimately, you know, you're gonna have these framed up, you're gonna have siding on, the roof on, but you still need to paint. The electrician and plumber need to come. They're gonna come in, you know, the typical white vans. Their work is gonna be inside. That would not be a big deal once these driveways are once the houses are substantially constructed. Because let's face it, those same vans are gonna come when somebody changes colors or does some rewiring or something way down the road. So, to me, I need to see something more than a turnout or a plan, show me the turning movements on the driveway. You might have a bigger radius on some of these driveways to facilitate a good-sized rig. I think 30-foot is probably the smallest size you got. Is there 50-footers that'll come up here?
Not that we have.
Okay.
I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we want to build on that. We try pushing it 45.
Yeah, 45. Well, if it's planned, it won't be a problem. The maintenance agreements are important, and they've been, are under review by the village attorney's office. I've looked at them. You know, they're covering things like, you know, common utilities, the ability to maintain these swales. My vision for this project is keep the lawn areas down. If someone were to say, no, I want to change the grading, I want to have a golf course lawn here. I've always wanted one, I still don't. Weeds grow fine and they look green too. But maintain some of that meadow vegetation around. Sure, you're going to have a mowed lawns alongside the driveway around the house. You know, everybody wants areas to play with their kids. But these are large lots and you get off towards the back here. I'd like to see that stay the same. Not that it can't get mowed, you know, maybe once, twice a year, but keep it a meadow type of grass. It's a low maintenance. There's wildflowers in it. It's good for the environment. It slows runoff down as opposed to, you know, putting green type of grass. So, and it keeps the project below the 5-acre threshold. So it can avoid some of the full SWIP requirements that would involve basins and so, you know, is this a perfect piece of land that doesn't have any issues? No. I haven't seen one of those in years. Those have been developed 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. We're into the more challenged lots of land that have some things that are, I would call this infill development. You know, you're developed around you, and now you want to play nice in the sandbox, do something that is as low impact as it can. How the land is set up, I think years ago this was set up to have a public village road at West Cahary Plank. It was wide enough, and come out to Western Avenue, what we'd call the Full Monty subdivision, where you've got village streets, the village streets designed, you know, per standards, drainage, catch basins everywhere, stormwater management, water main, hydrants all along the way, ownership of the right-of-way by the village and all the utilities within. To make that feasible economically would require many more lots, and I know that was discussed earlier on, that there could be 22 lots here. I'm a village resident. I'm concerned about some of the impacts of development myself. Those include our water. We do have water capacity, and particularly for infill developments like this, but that capacity and excess capacity is going down. There's people out beyond the village that want water. You know? The sewer plant does have capacity. That was upgraded in the 2000s. That has capacity, but everything does have a limit. What that plant does get is a lot of infiltration and inflow, I. So when it really rains, there's some filling of tanks, and it's beyond it's within its capacity, but it's got some issues. So we want to keep below the 5 acres, keep the meadows, have some grass for the lots. Not regrade all that land. Once you start grading it, that's the disturbance that can get you over 5 acres. As it is, it's below that. I'm forgetting something. Almost done.
Is keeping it below the 5 acres, is that helpful for the overall function of the community, or is that just to keep it from being subject to greater regulation?
I think both. I think it's retaining some of those meadow grasses is good for the runoff coefficients that we have, the amount of runoff, how quickly it runs off. I'm comparing that to the subdivision where you have manicured lawns everywhere. Yes, they have their street trees and trees just like this, but the meadow grass retains the runoff and the rainfall within it much better than a short clipped grass. It does, there is additional regulation insofar as DEC, a full SWIP if you go over 5 acres, but this can be developed with less than 5 acres of ground disturbance. Less is more.
I have a question about where the sump pumps are gonna be, because the storm drain where my sump pump goes is backed up because it's 55.
Yes.
And from his plans, I see that the sump pumps from those houses are going right straight through the floodplain zone into the storm drain that has overflooded into a creek that has a tendency to flood as well.
There are no, thank you for reminding me, because that was where I was turning to.
I mean,
These,
downspouts are one thing, and rain gutters are one thing.
but you gotta have sump pumps.
On where the houses are going is not in the floodplain zone. Where he's directing the sump pumps from that property is down through into between the two houses.
None of the utilities shown here are sump pump discharge lines. What they are, you see force mains, that's the sanitary sewage. Each house will have a grinder pump outside, gravity flow into it. The sumps are not shown yet. And that needs to be part of.
Is there a retention, could he dig it like a retention pond to have the sump pumps go into the retention pond, keeping it up on?
All right, if I might, for public record, would you be so kind as to come up and, if you don't mind answering the question, use the microphone so we can have it on record?
So I can kind of get to your answer, and maybe you still want to come up with the,
Or he could restate the question.
a sump pump is basically to keep your basement dry for those,
Right, it usually is a pit, and then it gets pumped out.
and it has to go somewhere.
Right,
It's not going to the sewer system, has nothing to do with the water. And having it point out and just go right to your neighbor's house without a means of it going away, not acceptable. We do have drainage swales. There are places to go with it. West Harry Plank Road towards existing properties is not one of them. That's why I wanted these swales, is so it can come up and have a chance to discharge. Now, often that isn't done on the surface. The eloquent means of doing that, and I'm sure you might have seen these, it's called a dry well. And what that is it's called, it looks like a block of Swiss cheese in a concrete manhole. It has perforations in it. The sump line can go to it, where, strategically located, where it'd be out back, near a swale, so that, when that 100-year storm comes, or where there's a ton to drain, it might come out of the surface grate and then flow overland through the drainage swale set up. But they should not be located. We had to move the rain garden. I want those facilities as far away as possible. But, putting a dry well there is a means of having a discharge where it won't freeze in the winter, and has a means of overflow that get to some of these infiltration trenches and vegetated swales.
He would like to say something. Go ahead. He's kind of hard of hearing, so if you have a question,
Okay.
speak up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's totally right. Thanks.
My name's Kim Johnson. My wife, I have the storm drain that goes into the creek. But,
You gotta speak up.
well, I could hear him pretty much.
Yeah, but they gotta.
Anyways,
There you
anyways,
There you go.
I measured the distance from our storm, the storm drain that goes underneath Scary Plank into the creek. It's about 80, 85, 90 foot at a rough estimate. I went online to see what the normal or the standard provisions are for going from one storm box to another in linear feet. Once you go over the 200 to 300 foot, it's supposed to be a 24-inch diameter storm drain. We have a 12-inch in our storm box that goes from the corner of our property into the creek, into Fly Creek. That distance, we're supposed to have 24, you're not supposed to choke it down from the distance, because our property is 200 foot deep, and that puts it almost 300 foot from the edge of our property into Fly Creek, and I'm not sure where they plan on putting the storm drain hook up there. So if you're going 300 foot, you're supposed to have a 24 inch. How can you have a 24 inch if you already have a 12 inch where you dump it into? It's not made to handle that kind of.
I think you're getting some things mixed up. The 24-inch, it's not talking about a size of pipe. It's talking about the size of the structure. Now, these are going to be 4-foot diameter manholes in all likelihood. That's a new one, that's a new one.
See, I was told it was there last time, not here.
Yeah, there's nothing up
Well,
there.
that's what the gentleman I talked to last time said.
Okay. The size of the pipe has everything to do with the quantity of water coming into it. The existing pipe going out to the creek, that really, I've only seen the top of it because it's buried in stone.
I understand what you mean by that, but how are you gonna get the proper pitch that's coming from 200 foot from property to property, then you're coming up here, wherever this is getting dumped in, for the runoff to come into there?
Well, there's elevation difference. Down here, this catch basin rim is at elevation 410.3. We're like 3 to 4 feet higher up here, so gravity drainage to both swale and pipe, or just pipe going up there, will get drainage from here to there. But what really needs to happen is the creek needs to be dredged. The piping that is there, even the catch basin that's right there, can't even see the pipe.
Right, I understand.
It's full of,
Under the ground, but you're gonna have a 4 foot higher elevation here, pitching all the way down to here. And if this doesn't catch all the runoff, then you're gonna start hitting the back of our property here.
one of the things that, so on the west side, I had them put in a swale. It isn't shown quite right, but on the, you're here?
Yeah, that's right here, yeah.
On the east side, that's why I was talking about that asphalt tip-up, such that this road pavement doesn't drain off to your lot, it comes down to here. Now, there's already existing drainage that comes onto your lot. Again, I'm gonna revisit what I said about Altamont. It drains west to east. We all get a little drink of everybody's runoff because in a few areas that there are formal drainage systems, that is what happens. You know, St. Lucy's comes towards my house. Grand Street comes to my house, crosses one side of the road right onto the other, and goes right on to Thatcher's Drive. That's the way it's been for
Yeah.
many years.
But right here, because the road sits up about 8 inches higher than down here, and this starts to back up, and you're still draining this way, you're looking for a flood.
Not from this project, but this will flood because it is in a floodplain. What we're trying to do is to make things a little bit better, but that's, you know, the creek is the most influencing factor for your backups. There's not free discharge and not even close. I can't even see the pipe out here in the creek.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the top of it once. I went up there this afternoon. I can't find it anymore. It's buried.
Just look for the green sign.
And bring a shovel. Yeah, no, it's quite an effort to dredge a creek. I've seen it after it was freshly done. You know, it was quite a bit of clearance underneath the pedestrian bridge over Euclid to the point where I could see this drain coming from West Schoharie Plank. It's a polyethylene line coming from the end of Euclid. Neither can be found. I could dig there for 3 hours and maybe or maybe not find them. I generally know where they are, but
Yeah, with the last main rainstorm, it's like this far, come up to the bottom of the bridge.
I don't doubt it.
Very close. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's legitimate drainage concerns. The number one concern for the existing properties, with or without this project, is dredging the creek.
And then this is where it slopes down here, this is gonna get kind of directed down this way,
Down to here, and
directed down.
around. So we're diverting around existing properties to the extent feasible. But that doesn't change the floodplain. Your property's in the floodplain, this isn't gonna change it one way or another.
But isn't the road in the floodplain too?
That way we
The
can get
driveway?
that.
Yeah, I have a question. So one thing we haven't really talked about is that in the access corridor for the road from Plank Road, you're basically taking what's a natural detention area now and converting it into an impermeable surface, right?
To some
Yeah.
degree, yes,
Yeah.
there is,
There's some swales on either side, but,
there are some modest swales on either
Yeah.
side.
so do you think that, I mean, that'll increase the peak flow down the stream? You know, because in the past, without that there, you would be able to store some water there, and that won't be possible anymore. Now it's just going to drain from there.
And not contribute to some of those areas like in the backyard, you know, that hole I talked about, the boil area. This project isn't gonna go fix that.
Right, but yeah, it could increase the flooding tendency because you're not going to be able to store that, you know, basically a quarter of an acre by a foot of water.
There would be some, you know, there are swales on either side and it comes up, you know, the trees are overgrown and, you know, it's kind of a mess in there now, but there isn't a lot of storage there. The real peak comes from
Up above.
up above.
Okay.
Beat the peak, get this runoff out of here before the haymaker comes.
Could
Why,
you-
you know, there's a bridge at Maple, there's a bridge at Lincoln, there's private road bridges along here. Each one of them is a restriction.
Could you put culverts under the access road to store some of that water?
I think it would,
I mean, large culverts.
I think it'd be a minor benefit. I put more faith in the redirection and conveyance of it. Filling in some of the holes in the back of these lots would prevent that standing 4 or 5 foot of water. Fill it, so it runs off and comes out.
But
We're gonna
doesn't
put a
that-
new inlet, we're gonna put 2 new catch basins, I say we, somebody, and a flared end section, so there is more of a means to catch and get the water out of there. That
But-
doesn't exist now.
In a natural floodplain, the standing water actually protects the, it blunts the maximum quantity of the flow down the creek bed, right? To some degree, or no?
I think that storage that we're talking here is minor compared to the whole stream of the.
Okay, all right.
One question I had, I've heard this reference as Fly Creek. Is that real? Is that, it's a tributary. I always known it as an unnamed tributary to the Bozenkill. But
Some years ago, names were proposed for both of the creeks. I think Tom Capuano came up with them. And I think that at one point, they were adopted by the village and then sort of forgotten.
okay,
But there were names
Okay.
that we had. The USGS doesn't recognize them.
yeah, okay. Thank you. That's essentially what I had.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grant.
So, yeah, I do think that there's some process left with the plans, but there's also additional process when we really know what these homes are gonna look like. So, the aesthetics of them, the driveway orientations, where the trucks are gonna turn around, where the gutters are gonna be. These boxes on here are basically artistry at this point, but real floor plans and real building plans, so that will go through the building process will help bring the design intent.
A question that I had about the rain gardens and the swales is that the SWIP has a lot of calculations for how do you size these things. That would be done after the plans for the houses, or while the plans for the houses are being approved, or do we do that now?
It really it all has to do with the roof area.
Yeah,
There's some good sized houses here, there's some smaller sizes here. It can be done later, but these weren't necessarily required because of the exemption, of the 5-acre exemption. This land and the environs around the project, I asked for them. I asked for these rain gardens. So they're
Well-
generically shown here. They can be longer, they can be a little wider, but, they're a place taker as far as location-wise. We moved the lot 5-1 away from the homes. There needs to be another one on one each for lots 10 and 11, but it's a placeholder. Once you know how many square feet there is, then it can be sized.
well, even though the area of disturbance is kept below 5 acres, can we as a board ask for certain aspects of the SWIP to be employed, such as using the SWIP calculations for sizing?
Yes. But you gotta, real floor plans, real footprints. You're gonna need those.
Okay, but,
It has everything to do with the impervious area going to.
but we can ask, we can go beyond the minimum state specifications.
Yeah, there are sizing criteria for the rain gardens. It does have,
That would
and,
be correct.
that's something that wouldn't take Bill Smart long to do as part of a building permit submission.
Would it make sense to run a hydrologic model to show what the flooding would be now and after the project? Or is this too small a creek
This
to
is too
bother?
small for that. There's probably close to 800 acres of watershed beyond this, how many acres we got here, 14? 12, yeah. And Beat the Peak is part of the philosophy in hydrology. I've done plenty of it. This is not significant enough, particularly if the meadows are kept and the rain gardens are put in and the infiltration and conveyances and diversions are done. If this were a 22-lot subdivision with village streets, there'd be a lot more impervious area, a lot more lots, a lot more roof areas. That's a different story. That's the full SWIP, where you want treatment and quantity control. So these are generically shown, but I think they are a plus. And, I knew the issues along Marion, I knew the issues around Scary Plank, so I asked for them. I think they're a good asset to have.
Good. Anybody else from the board have any questions right now? Okay, thank you. I do want to make note that we received a couple of letters from property owners, one from Joseph and Jaya Connors on April 22nd. That will be entered into the records. Another one from Charles Trout on 3/29/2024. It would also be entered to the records, okay? In these considerations. At this point in time, I entertain a motion to not close the public hearing and maintain it open, because we have some additional information that has to be considered.
Second that.
You have a first?
First.
Okay. We take a vote?
I'm sorry, who was first and who was second?
First? Simon second?
Board member Lynch,
Yes.
board member Trout,
Yes.
board member Freeman,
Yes.
board member Witham,
Yes.
chairperson Lemire.
In favor, okay. But I do want to make motion that a note that this hearing is open if anybody has an additional comment they have been made in the past.
Will we have that opportunity at the next scheduled hearing date?
Absolutely,
So I'll reserve until then.
sure. There'll be additional information that has to be considered, okay?
Yes, I'm gonna write up my comments, I'm gonna put the letter, there'll be some of those special notes on the plan for staying off West Scary Plank Road. Some cleanup of some of the plan details and so on. And note for the building permit phase or some of the known quantities of what are we really, what kind of house we building in, some location.
I would say a creation of a list of detailing what's going to be installed for consideration, sizing, type of materials in the construction.
Yeah, you know, the details for rain gardens are in the design manual. They're easily extrapolated, the sizing calculations. It's not rocket science, and the director, Kevin Mark, can do that and provide for building permit phase.
Okay, and a little guidance on what you had mentioned, the vegetation cover, the percentage. I know that Sam Fox, in this proposal, there's a lot of land that's not being disturbed, but also a recommendation, as you talked about, meadows or
Yep.
wild, so that, and that would be stipulated also in the maintenance agreement with any home buyers, not that they come and say, hey, I want a golf course, and put grass everywhere, and that they know that they will also have to be maintaining that. Okay?
From a legal standpoint, the rain gardens, some people will like them, some people may not, but they're an important asset, and part of a deed restriction shall be, thou shalt not fill them in.
Yes. Okay, so,
So how would that be enforced? If somebody fills it in, does the code officer go into their backyard and look at the rain garden? Or how does that work?
Like it does everywhere, the neighbors call you, they throw you under the bus. They always do. You know, there's the process.
yeah.
But, 20 years later, does the rain garden police come out? Ultimately, we got lots of people that notice things, so
Right.
you don't get away with it.
Okay. Thank you once again for your
Thanks.
time. I know in the last meeting, we didn't have an opportunity to approve the minutes for February 27th. Has everybody had an opportunity to look those over? And consider a motion to approve the minutes of February 27th, 2024?
I have, I got a question about that.
Sure.
I got into a bit of a discussion with Roe, and unfortunately, his response became inaudible. And according to the notes here, this is on page 7 of the notes. He said that he thought that the project as presented was going to be, he said it'll actually increase the quality of runoff in that area with the catch basins and with proper grading. And that really picked up my ears is does this make sense? And
Maybe increase infiltration, maybe?
yeah, but in his response, that you'll see a level of increased blank inaudible. And if Roe were here, I would ask him to try to reconstruct that conversation.
Easy if they're on the phone.
Well, the earth is not increasing, so I don't want to assume, but I'm only going to say that it would be water.
But you don't want increased water, increased infiltration, maybe.
Just a suggestion, instead of trying to recreate, since we don't have the record, and Ro can hear the question now, if he could address that in a further submission. I'd rather handle it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
Okay, well, that was my only comment about February.
okay. Anyone else? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 27th, 2024?
So moved?
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Robert?
Okay, so, roll call. So, Board Member Kenny? Okay, Board Member Litton?
Approved.
Board Member Pettit?
Agreed.
Board Member Freeman?
Approved.
Board Member Wickham?
In favor?
And Chairperson Romero?
In favor. Okay, can I hear or entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 23rd, 2024?
I'll make motion on that.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, so, Board Member Kenny? Board Member Litton?
Approve.
Board Member Pettit?
Favor?
Board Member Freeman?
A favor.
Board Member Wickham?
In favor?
And Chairperson?
In favor.
Chairperson Romero?
In favor. Is there any other business that we have to consider? Anybody have any thoughts? Nope, okay. Having heard none, consider a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do you want to set another meeting date, or?
Will be the regular meeting of, okay, for May 28th, yes.
Yeah.
In that case, is there an opportunity just to make a general statement if I come up? I don't know that I'll make the May 28th meeting public hearing still open.
Can you, well, the public hearing is not closed. We haven't voted on adjourning yet, so, yes.
Just want to make a general statement. I know it's getting late for us. Get ready to leave. Ryan Manicus, live on Gun Club Road.
I'm sorry, the mic I know is set down for, if you would grab it, that'd be great.
Ryan Manicus, I live on
You
Gun Club Road, and lived there for 16 years. Biggest challenge I had when we moved here, not originally from the area, was finding good single-family homes that didn't need a lot of renovation, didn't need a lot of work. That was our biggest challenge. So when this project came up, it piqued my interest because living on Gun Club Road, it was close by, I started to pay attention a little bit. I don't have any interest in the project other than I've looked at all the materials and I've kind of paid attention to the meeting minutes and what's been presented. And just as a general statement, I think we're kind of fortunate to have someone who, as a builder, lives, works, and cares about the community behind this project. It's clear this could be a much different project in front of the board. So I'm just happy that it's not a out-of-town builder that's trying to stuff 20 homes in here without any regard for the neighbors. Looking at the materials, it looks like, you know, the builder's looking and listening to the concerns and not to diminish any concerns from the neighbors, because real valid concerns. So I hope it's strongly considered that we listen to those concerns and react to them. And up to this point, it seems like the applicant has. It's probably I'll say part of the minority that kind of is in favor of this project. And I just felt like not being able to come to the next meeting, just wanted to kind of make my position known. There's a large group of people that, for whatever reasons, aren't well represented here for whatever reasons, but at least wanted to share our thoughts and our feelings. Just thankful we have someone local that's behind a project like this. And it seems like they're going above and beyond. So that's kind of it. And I just wanted to just make my comments to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Did I get a first on that? Anybody?
Yes,
Second the motion.
Simon first,
yeah.
Robert second.
I'll take second.
Approved.
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
How are we going to address this?
Many different points.
Have you read this?
Yeah. It's a rambling of different points.